and welcome everybody to this month's Lead and Learn. So we feel like this one is especially timely, especially relevant as we are just coming out of pre-market and gearing up for the October show. So today, or actually before I even dig into that, let me just remind everybody, these webinars are an opportunity to really tap into the vast knowledge of the IHFRA community, share best ideas, best practices, insights. And really the hope here is that, a rising tide lifts all boats. Maybe bad choice of words considering the hurricane outside, right? But this month, I am very excited to introduce someone that I've asked to come in and share her best practices along from hearing from the group here. But I'd like to welcome Heather Bolick, who's a friend of mine, and she is Senior VP of Sales at Manwa. So she's joining us today to kind of share some of her tried and true practices on sales strategies during market and just maximizing showroom walkthroughs. So again, Heather is a seasoned expert in the industry, and today we're going to dive into some practical field tested strategies that can hopefully help everybody boost their sales outcomes during market. So with that, Heather, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you, everyone. Elaine, where do you live? I know you're getting, the brunt of the storm down there.
I live 40 miles north of Tampa. So what happened to Tampa and happened to St.
Yes.
Clearwater, I'm just due east of Clearwater.
Well, we are, Steve and I were chatting this morning. I live in Greensboro and I'm here now, and Steve is in South Carolina, and we had no power or anything. So this storm is definitely coming right up through the middle and affecting us all. So certainly prayers for everyone. But thank you, Steve, for having me on. Just to give you a little bit of background about myself, although I'm a Senior VP of Sales for Manwa, I also have a handful of my own accounts that I work directly with. And I'm also a member of the IHFRA, happy to say. And then I also have some retail background. I spent half of my career as a buyer. So walkthroughs for me were extremely important to be effective and also to really pack a punch to make you and your product stand out for market follow-up.
So Heather,
yes.
Sorry, I was going to say, so really, like in order to kick things off properly, so the first question I had for you, and I think it's kind of a good segue into what we kind of discussed, but there's so much preparation ahead of market that goes into all this. And so can you sort of walk us through just kind of, what your best practices are for like now to market or between pre-market and market, all the prep work that goes into everything?
Absolutely. The first thing I do is spend a lot of time on the showroom floors. Go to your retailers, shop the floors, look at their assortments. You can see based on their assortments what they're missing, what their strengths are. You can look at their floor and see if they're certainly heavy and perhaps one cover. I personally sell upholstery, so whether it pertains to case goods or upholstery, but in the example of upholstery, I can look and see if they're heavy in one area, one function, one price point, then I automatically know that I need to focus on those areas. You can always assume that a floor is in flux and moving. About 30% of their floor is always in constant flux. That means they have about 30% of new goods coming in or 30% of old goods coming out. So the floor that you see, again, will be about 70% accurate. I also tell my sales reps, don't just focus on their websites, because on a website, you're getting about 60% of their actual assortment on the website. We do see that percentage increasing as e-commerce becomes more important and also as sales online increase. But right now, we think 60% is a pretty valid percentage as far as accuracy of what they have on their floor. A lot of that is based on whether they have good photography or not. It could be that simple. But the first thing, again, travel to your territories, but also talk to the salespeople, talk to the sales managers. They absolutely will not hold back, as you know, on some of the things that they're missing and some of the things that they feel like they need in order to sell and gain more market share on their retail floors. I take that information also with a grain of salt, because I was telling Steve earlier, I said, you walk in and somebody says they just missed a sale with a purple sofa. Well, guess what? They're going to be asking you for a purple sofa, which is not necessarily top of the list as far as what you want to sell the merchandisers when they come into the showroom. So just do the work, talk to a lot of people. You will see consistencies in what they ask for, and certainly align that to your lineup. But here's the last thing. As soon as you gather all that information, I ask for all of my sales reps to complete what we call a competitive analysis or a merchandising grid for each one of their retailers. And they put that 70% of their floor, and they put it in a good, better, best lineup. They separate it by price point, they separate it by function, and they separate it by cover. And it makes, again, I'm just pertaining to upholstery. So if you're case goods or any other category, you tie that into yours. However, with upholstery, it really allows us to know exactly what we need to do at market, and it makes it very clear on what we can offer them and show them when they get to the showroom.
It sounds like that's a pretty good way to sort of visualize all the alignments and just the product that is in your assortment, what's on their floor, and maybe what's missing. Can you share, again, like a little bit more detail on how that grid helps you in those conversations at market?
It does. So if you look and if you see that they have a lot of their best price points, and maybe they need some focus on good and better, then that will be areas that you can tie directly into the product that you will show them at market. The other thing is, if you see that they're heavy on leather versus fabric, then you can focus on perhaps a fabric story at market. Function is a big thing, again, pertaining to upholstery, but function with lights and drop down tables and power headrest. For us, it's about functions. And, with case goods, it can certainly tie into the different features and styles. That all makes a difference. And once you lay it out in a good, better, best merchandising grid, then you can very clearly see some of the voids in their lineup. And when you bring them into market and show them those goods, then you can bring in the information from the salespeople, the information from the sales managers, as well as the merchandising grid to really prove your point and the fact that they need to add that specific frame in the lineup.
Well, I think that's actually a really good segue and kind of to the next talking point, which is, Larry, let's talk about market itself. So when you're there and you have that customer in your showroom, how do you ensure that your walkthrough is really productive and it's not just a tour? For those unfamiliar with Manwa, I think, Heather, you said there's 200 slots in that showroom, or I'm sure there's a case for every kind of product category, but lines are massive now. We throw a lot of spaghetti on the wall. So how do you make it as productive as possible and not just showing them every little thing?
I say 200 too many. A lot.
Yeah.
And with my background as a retail buyer, my biggest pet peeve is when a rep would show me everything. It was my biggest pet peeve, no doubt. I not only I appreciated when I walked in, the rep and the salesperson had everything ready for me. They had already done their homework. They got to market early. They walked through the showroom. They already sat on everything. They knew what I call the golden nuggets of the showroom. They knew what they were going to offer me. They knew what they were going to show me. They walked past a lot of product that was perhaps unnecessary for me personally to see. And they took me straight to the items that pertain to me based on my merchandising grid, my price points, and everything I needed. So being selective up front and really focusing on those specific items makes a big difference. Yesterday, I was in upstate New York working with a big customer, and I told him, I said, we're going to be really focused this market. And her point was, she said, I would rather you go deeper on less frames than spread thin on too many frames, because if you're spread too thin, none of them stick. If you spend more time on less, then you pack a punch and you can really focus on the strength of the product, which is the next thing. learn the buzzwords, learn the features of market, learn what you're really selling, come up with something new and snazzy. If you come up with a buzzword for that feature or that cover and give it an identity, then it really sticks with a buyer. And granted, they will write it down, they'll put it on their iPad, they'll take pictures of it, and they tend to remember those buzzwords even better.
Okay, so it sounds like it's really, you're not so much selling as you are consulting. You're merchandising their line for them, essentially, right? You're being
I
very
like that
selective.
idea.
Yeah.
I think a salesperson certainly it's the key merchant for the merchandisers and the buyers. You're already doing your homework and you are essentially merchandising their line based off of what your showroom provides. But a consultant is a great way to say it. We should all be consultants and not salespeople, because then you're truly listening versus just simply selling.
Okay. So while you have them in the showroom and you're communicating with those buyers or with those merchants and retailers, like taking a bunch of notes, what are you doing like to capture that feedback and track all that? So maybe that's a good way to talk about, you know, how you digest all the information during market and then follow up with customers after market.
Every company has their own methods, whether it's MTab or different systems that they use. We actually have a portal and we can input commitments into our portal. We can turn those commitments directly into a price list. And most companies will have some type of resource like that. However, a lot of companies do not. And I make sure that every time I'm walking through with a retailer, I take my own notes. That's my pet peeve number 2. I have had salespeople come to me and they say, hey, why don't you share what you wrote down with me and I'll follow up after market. I'm like, that's not really going to work for me. So make sure that you're prepared. You take ample notes. You know what, you can tell if they're really interested in something with the nod of their head, the number of pictures that they're taking. But it's important for me to know commitments. And we're going to talk about that with market follow-up.
Okay, so yeah, let's dive right into that. Let's talk about timely follow-ups. So what's your approach of staying top of mind and turning those walkthrough or those showroom visits into sales?
The sooner the better. However, respect a merchandiser's time. Most likely the week after market, they need to get back. They need to place more orders. They need to clean up and catch back up to what they missed out on while they were at market. But then after that, the week after market, you should be out there hitting every retailer, making appointments and getting your follow-up done immediately. It's fresh in their mind. They remember it. And if you're one of the top ones to be there and you can really resell your product and put everything out in front of them, then most likely they will choose your product versus somebody that's waiting 4 to 6 weeks after market. But the other thing is its presentation for markets is make sure that you make it easy. Make it easy for them to buy. And sitting down with a rep, and I travel with a lot of our reps at Manoir, and many of them pull out this big, huge swatch handle. And then they say, show me a color in Calgary. And then they start flipping through swatches, flipping through, and fabric pieces are flying everywhere. Don't do that. And I think that's the number one thing I see most sales reps do. Have your follow-up, have your presentation, have your quote sheet. And if it's case goods, have the finish ready. If it's upholstery, have the swatch ready and present it. There's your quote sheet. There's your fabric. Or if it's a special order program, then have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 of the top selling colors of that specific cover. You've got to make it easy for them. And making it easy for a buyer, they will remember it. And again, most likely they will move forward with that specific frame.
Thank you so much. And I apologize. I had some audio issues there for a second.
No problem.
But it sounds like, it's making sure you have a polished presentation, making it as easy for them as possible, and just being diligent in the follow-ups and again, being that consultant rather than a salesperson.
Now, one other thing to add is commitments, because all of
Mm,
you have multiple retailers and most of them want exclusive product. So it's important when you're meeting with a customer retailer that you get their commitment, because you're going to keep it clean for distribution and you're going to keep it clean against other retailers. However, it's a two-way road. If they are asking for exclusivity and if they're asking for you to withhold a product, then the expectation is that they will order that product soon. And when I say soon, meaning normally between 4 to 8 weeks after market, sometimes soon if you're sitting down in front of them. But we can't keep great product from other retailers if they're just going to hang on to it 2 or 3 months. We need to make sure that if you keep it exclusive, they're going to follow up with the POs.
that's fair. Okay, so look, I think you and I have covered a lot today, from kind of what you do in preparation ahead of market, maximizing your time during those walkthroughs, and then setting up really effective follow-ups after the show. So I want to go ahead and first say thank you for sharing those kind of best practices and actionable items or insights. But before it's 20 after, before we wrap up, I really want to open it up to the rest of the group to see if they have either questions for you, share any other best practices, tips, ideas on the topic, because again, it's meant to be sort of a bit of an open dialogue. So before we wrap on anything today, let's open it up for the rest of us. Anyone have questions or comments or other best practices they want to share?
Heather, this is Elaine Greenberg. How are you?
I'm good.
Question. I have I'm an accessory rep right now.
Okay.
I've been an upholstery rep and I keep my territory very clean. And my stores know it. And I've been in the business over 30 years. So my point being is this. I've got a lot of stores now that are down. What do you consider they're going to come into market? If they do come to market, this has been a very big blow to us, frankly, my entire West Coast. I don't know how many of my stores are going to come. They've been wobbling because of the business world since the first of the year has not been the greatest. What do you consider exclusivity? How much should they be required to do for the year? Or let's say, in my particular case, November through March. How much business should they be considered that they have to do in order to get that exclusivity?
It comes to managing your territory, and accessories is far different than upholstery, because accessories, there's not really an exclusivity on that unless it's a bigger piece, a more pronounced piece that will stand out. So accessories is a little bit different, but when it comes to case goods and upholstery, then if they place the orders, obviously working with your territory, depending on the bigger accounts, you've already, going back to the pre-market prep, you already saying, okay, this is an account. This account can do so much on 1 or 2 pieces. So I'm going to save those pieces specifically for this larger account, knowing that they can bring in the volume, knowing that they can deliver and bring you a certain amount. And then you sort of tier your product based on what you consider sort of the best items, or as I say, my golden nuggets in market. But you can tier that based off of not only the assortment that we mentioned, but also on the retailers that can do the business.
Unfortunately, I happen to work for a company that is you can spot it a mile away. So it's a specific product, and it's again it's driven in the sense that it is custom made, not custom made but it's hand blown. It's glass.
Okay.
So that's been a very big problem of mine, because everybody wants the exact same color, exact same this, and guys,
right.
And so what I've had to do is say, you can't have it, but you can. And that's really caused a major problem.
And that's just, that's maneuvering. That's something that we all face, because not only if it's the best thing at market, then everybody will want it, and you have to pick and choose who you're going to sell it to. I try to, when a customer's coming in, and let's face it, the big guys come in early and they come in first. Right. And that's great, because if they do that, then they can come in, they can already commit to a frame, commit to that item, commit to that piece, commit to the blown glass that you're talking about. And then that automatically pulls it out of the distribution for everybody else. Normally, there are multiple pieces, though, that you can refer them to. And there are other variations of that blown glass that you perhaps can take them to as an alternate.
Okay. That's basically what I've been doing for the last 5 years.
Yes. Thank you, Elaine, and prayers to you guys down in Florida.
Thanks.
Oh, Ted, I see you've got your hand up.
I do. First of all, Steve, I'd like to commend you on doing a webinar like this, something that's really not done in the past. Heather, thank you for sharing your knowledge and your expertise of your career. And I know that your line is a prestigious line. It's one of the finest in the world, not just, domestically sold. The questions that I have are basically, it's got to do a little bit with Elaine too. Obviously, the way that the economy is now, and retail is a little bit up for grabs as far as customers. I know that management and ownership are very skeptical about giving a product distribution and claiming it to certain customers, only because they don't know who's going to be in business the next minute or not, or who'll be bought out or not. And, everybody wants, as you say, the golden nuggets, and there's very little about it. So, everybody wants to be the best, and it's kind of driven by the biggest, but the biggest are growing bigger. The independents and strong regional players are shrinking. So what is your suggestion as far as, would you rather, my territory had our van in this picture. So if you gave exclusivity to our van, you annihilated any relationships with their competition who are in business now. With that being said, a Badcock was the same way, and now they're gone. So
right.
to get through all of that minutia and to stay strong and to have your company stay strong with the right retailers that you think also good, how do you go about that?
That's a great question. And honestly, I think it's the responsibility of the manufacturer. For example, we always have multiple variations. If we're going to have a sharp, solid, go-getter price point at market that we know everybody wants a piece of, then we're not going to have just one. We're going to have anywhere from 2 to 5. So there will be plenty for everybody in that territory to be able to have a variation, a type, or a version of this, then they can all be competitive. I do think it's more and more the responsibility of manufacturers. Since I'm on the manufacturing end and in management, we push really hard to make sure that we have multiple options available for the reps, so you don't encounter this situation. And like you said, the big guys keep getting bigger and the small guys keep getting smaller. And if we don't have multiple options for them, it's sort of, perpetuating that situation. And we need to support our small and our medium-sized accounts too. I do think that we need to make sure and push your manufacturers to have multiple options of some of these key items that they're really pushing for market. And I'll give you another example too. At Manuel, we are very clear. I think being open, honest, and disclosing information is always the best route. All of our recliners, every single recliner, we consider commodity. And we tell our retailers that, we let them know that, and we say, we're not holding this recliner for you. It's commodity business. However, we'll do our best to put it in a different color or cover, for your direct competitor. But we do not hold recliners exclusive. And some of our home theater entertainment sofas, the same thing. If you have competitors that are knocking off your product, and it happens to us all, then you may want to consider opening up that item also as commodity, so you can be competitive against your competition and again gain more slot counts. There's a lot of marketing strategies and merchandising strategies around that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think Jay has got his hand up.
Hi, Heather.
Hey, Jay.
Do you do business with designers?
We do not. Well, let me correct that. We are a container direct business. However, we work with OEM customers that do sell direct to designers. We are not direct to designer though.
Okay. I'm sorry, it broke up there at the end.
Oh, I said we do not sell direct to designers. We are a container direct company, but we support a lot of our OEM customers that do sell direct to designers. I think you're on mute, Jay.
Okay.
Or is that? Oh,
pardon me?
Oh, there you go. Sorry about that.
Heather, it's great to meet you. I'm out in Northern California, and I'm curious. I had a couple of quick questions for you. I'm hoping you might be able to help me.
Sure.
You mentioned you have 200 different, I think it was 200 different collections.
Yes.
I work with a company that also has far too much product, quite honestly. How do you suggest a rep navigate that friction between a vendor's desire to show everything in the showroom rather than selling with a targeted approach? Typically, as you know, fewer people come from Northern California to High Point. So I make it my business to know their business and to be able to have a narrow focus on product once I'm in the showroom. But of course, sometimes there's management that insists upon showing the widest array of product, and you end up taking a 3-hour tour with a buyer that's unconscious at the end of the presentation. How do you suggest one go about navigating that?
I'm giving you my opinion, and my opinion is the opposite of that. My opinion, coming from a very large retailer in the Northeast that I was just visiting yesterday, my opinion of me with my buying experience, it goes back to you do more with less. Right. And like you said, they're going to be comatose and they're going to be spent and burnt out by the time they finish the walkthrough if you're really spread too thin and touching every product. That's not how they want to buy. They want you to do the work for them up front. And granted, I'm speaking again from my opinion and certainly how we handle it at Manoir. The other thing is, based off of the conversation earlier, we have a lot of duplication in our showroom simply for distribution. So there's a lot of items that you can walk past and that you can move past because it's either duplication or you're saving that frame to show to a different retailer, perhaps with a different arm. So there's some easy navigation around that. But I can tell you, my getting back to my biggest pet peeve as a buyer is absolutely, I want you to do the work. You need to know what to show me. I work with a pretty large chain in the central U.S. and in Omaha, Nebraska, and they. So without naming names, but basically when they come in, I've worked with them now for over 12 years in this role, and they can come in 200 slots. I can have them in and out in about 30, 45 minutes with selecting anywhere from 5 to 10 frames. And the chances of me securing those placements are extremely high because I have done the research, and also they trust I'm not going to take them to anything that's not worthy of their showroom, really. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but it sounds like that might be more of a management call, which is certainly different than how I manage.
And what other tools might you be using after market? Are you using video clips that you might send to a retailer as a reminder of what they've seen, and e-blast, text messaging? Mm-hmm. What other tools might you be using that you might suggest?
We have a portal, and our portal has everything from pictures, price lists, specs, dimensions. And we also do videos on some of the key items for market. And at Meanwhile, we did a couple videos at the end of last market on the key items, and we posted some on LinkedIn. We have the videos available via our portal that you can send directly to the customer that really focuses on the features and benefits of that frame. But it's used more so for people that didn't come to market, especially you in Northern California. I mean, I would bet maybe only 30% of your customers are coming to High Point. And videos are key for you to come back and show them the best frames aftermarket to get those placements also, although they didn't see it in person. But high res pictures, lifestyle driven pictures, you have to have all of that. And whether your company's using MTab or Portal or some other resource, those are great resources. And if not, then make sure that you have all of those pictures in hands, the follow-up. If you sell upholstery, then the covers and the swatches to where you can go in and sit in front of them and, redirect their focus and get it back to what they saw in the showroom and then close the deal.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you what your perspective is on the current state of the industry and on the current state of repping. What do you see changes that are in place and those types of things?
It's tough because Labor Day nationwide was pretty solid, but then what happened 2-3 weeks after Labor Day? It's been pretty quiet out there. Somebody made the comment before about the big guys getting bigger and the small guys getting smaller, and I do see that happening. Unfortunately, I think that we're going to see some more changes in the industry. Some of the bigger guys that are going out, and some manufacturers that may or may not be able to last through the next several, I would say 4, 5, 6 months. So this industry is always in flux. It's always changing. As far as a rep, I think that the best reps are the ones that are focused. They know their customer, they know their product line, because the best relationships I had with my reps were the ones that were in touch. They were the ones that were visiting my retail floors. They're the ones that follow up immediately after market. They get on my schedule. I think be present and be relevant, and that will continue to put you up front in a buyer's mind.
Thank you, Warren. Excellent questions as always. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add, or anyone want to jump in?
Well, thank you, Heather.
Go ahead, Jake.
Heather, I work for smaller companies. You're a giant in the industry. I sometimes, and I've been doing this a long time, but it's sometimes I have a hard time not getting in front of them, but getting them to believe that they should buy from a smaller company like the ones I represent. When you were a buyer, what did you think about the smaller companies that wanted you to buy if you represented a large retailer? How did that relationship work for you?
I like to give small domestic companies a shot. And that's interesting coming from me, where I have been working the past 12 years for an overseas company. But as a buyer, to give that company a shot, absolutely. But I would do my due diligence up front. Can they deliver and can they handle my volume? One. And then if it's order by order, then if it sells. But I always say, if I believe in my rep, if I trust my rep, and if my rep is bringing this to, in front of me to look at, then I'm going to trust their perspective. And if the pricing is right, and if it fits in my assortment, then I would like to try some of it. That's how I would place it. They're still pulling out the heartstrings of being able to support a small business. We all want to do that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Jay. Anyone else? Or Sam, I love putting you on the spotlight here for a second, but knowing that you tend to deal with newer companies, and you're dealing with a different channel of distribution being online, like what do your markets tend to look like? How do you prepare? Is it different than someone like Heather, who's taking that targeted approach and being very narrow and specific in the showroom? Like, what does your prep work look like, and how do you? I know how those e-com market appointments are. They're typically not showcasing product, but how are you preparing?
Like every other business, give us better prices.
Yep.
Sure, we're going to give you all the discounts in the whole wide world. So it's more of the partnership. How are we going to grow together? And really having the hard conversations. And where is it lacking in that partnership? So because I come from brick and mortar, I still have a brick and mortar account because they're just so fabulous. I can't let them go. I'm always in the perspective, how can we look better? And, Elaine, even when you were looking at, we've got this glass blown piece, business is down. I never talk about product. I'm talking about marketing. I'm talking about social media. I'm talking about website. I'm talking about, making sure they're getting in front of the right customer. Who is the right customer and how can I help them in that way? And so ultimately it goes down to that's building the trust. And when we build the trust, that's when we can go, no, you don't want to look at that. No, you want to look at this. You're going to buy it. It's going to happen because I've established that trust. And then I go a step further. I'm like, I want your opinion. I don't know about this. And there it establishes a partnership. So it doesn't matter if it's brick and mortar or e-commerce, we have the exact same conversations. And it's about how can we be better partners and taking the bigger picture first. So that's how I prepare. It's a lot of data too, and a lot of data analytics. It's that research up ahead of time. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
That's great feedback, Sam. Thank you.
Yeah. And it really, truly, it sounds like to have a successful market, it's directly correlated to how much homework you've done, how much time you spent with those customers. Have you established a trust? Have you established a relationship? And that's what a really great rep does. Are there any other questions before we wrap it up for the day? Or any other comments, best practices, anything like that?
Yeah, I would just like to say one thing. So speaking about online and brick and mortar, so one of the parts of my territory, Wayfair opened up a tremendous store. It's 150,000 square feet on 2 floors. I'm sure, Heather, you know about it. It's right on the highway in Chicagoland area. And from what I understand, I don't know how successful it is, but they certainly pull in the traffic. It's like a museum. So I know that they're looking at a lot of storefronts that are about 30,000 square feet in other territories to do the same thing. And what it does, it kind of like puts the retailers in a position where they don't know if they have to go after that customer that's going into Wayfair or keep their same line of judgment. I don't know if anybody else has heard about this venture of theirs, but I thought it would be a good topic of conversation before we dismiss it.
Well, I'm happy to share my 2 cents on it, and I'm sure everyone else has got their opinion. But I think it's been kind of an interesting paradigm shift for them, right? Wayfair believed that you could buy. That was their whole business model: is I want to sell big and bulky online. I want to create a curated experience online and make it super convenient for a customer, and essentially bring the showroom to them online. And now they see the value in the brick and mortar business and having the ability to let a customer come in and touch and feel, right? So I've always said, as someone who was responsible for e-commerce business for the few companies I've worked with, if a company sells online, my hope is that it doesn't divide the pie; it just makes the pie larger, and it hopefully means that company is capable of providing the assets for retailers to showcase those products really, really well and really prominently through their own websites. And I hope that with Wayfair trying to secure a foothold in the brick and mortar storefronts, that maybe that means more brick and mortar stores will become an omni-channel resource and take a little bit of online real estate from Wayfair. I mean, I think that's the reality, is that most customers now are shopping on, or I would say starting the journey online and then maybe ending up in a retail store. Um, Wayfair is obviously keen on that and picking up on that. So I think maybe it'll uh, bring some of the retailers that have been a little slower to adapt to the omni-channel approach into, force them into it, which I think hopefully makes everyone a little stronger.
So what my philosophy is that everybody, you used to have two different ways of doing business, either e-commerce or brick and mortar. And the more successful retailers that have been getting and garnering that website business, it's been more of a click to brick. As you said, they do the research online, which brings them to the store. But some customers just don't want to face a human being in a store, and they'd rather just order online and whatever it is, it is. And that's why furniture returns are high when it comes to e-commerce. And that's where a whole other segment of retailer popped up, because they're buying all those returns and they're selling them at a discount. So yeah, I just wanted everybody's, thoughts and seeing how everybody's differing on it.
How is the store doing? Do you have any feedback?
As far as its numbers go, it's surprising. I go by departments more than I go by the success of the store in general. But a lot of the Bed Bath and Beyond business that ceased to exist, except online from Beyond, a lot of that department in that store is doing really well. Another part of the department that's doing really well is their remodeling business in like a restoration hardware kind of display. So their bathroom and their kitchen remodeling business is at an all-time high. Furniture is at another standpoint, because when you walk into the store, it's all upholstery on the main floor, and it's a lot of Joybird and that kind of product. And the people that I saw there, the younger people, it's cool. I like it. It doesn't matter how it sits. The older people sit on it and they walk out of the store. So that's what I got out of it so far.
Thank you for sharing.
But I will tell you this, every weekend, you can't get a parking place.
Yeah. Oh, and I
see your expression, Sam.
Yeah, I was curious to see what Sam had to say about that, or Harvey, JT. I'd love to get you guys to weigh in, but it's almost like a generational thing, like you said. To me, what I've noticed here lately is that Wayfair's average price points have been lowered lately, so it's more promotionally priced product, which again, maybe that's why it's a younger crowd in there. Maybe it's someone purchasing for a smaller space, or they have kids, so they know it's going to be a little bit more disposable. And I think I don't want to make it a generational thing, but I think the traditional brick and mortar retailers have a different type of customer that they might be catering to. I could be wrong. Just my personal opinion, my thought.
It's impossible that they're taking more business away from IKEA, going after the younger generation, than they are from the normal brick and mortar, classical businesses. What do you think about that, Ted?
I think it's absolutely true, because IKEA is making an expansion program in the United States. They're opening up more stores in more areas. Some of the areas that they have a store, they're opening additional stores to garner that business too. So I think you're right on that standpoint. But a lot of times when people purchase something from a store, brick and mortar, and they're happy with it, they go back. I see less and less focus on the loyalty end of it, going back to Wayfair for their next purchase, or as they step up or they grow older, as far as the younger age group, they want something more substantial or built better or sit better. and they want to test it. And I think that's why they're opening up brick and mortar.
You know what? I do have one question for the group. So after April market, so I want to say that when I spoke to some friends over at the High Point Market Authority, which is the group that hosts the High Point Market, 67% of attendees were designers. How many folks on the call are catering to the design side of the business? And how do you prepare for a designer? And how is it different? How is it similar than preparing for a traditional brick and mortar retailer?
Because of the amount of showrooms I have showroom help specifically for that, because I have to meet all the appointments that I make to High Point Market. That's my goal, not the people that show up. And if somebody doesn't want to make an appointment, those customers, I just can't guarantee that I'll be there, to show them. That's why I have showroom helpers that are pretty good at what they do. And designer traffic was up tremendously at the summer markets as well, because they were having events at each market.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I asked the question, I started thinking about it a little bit. And Elaine, I know you mentioned where you are, and Warren, I know you mentioned it, but there is a little bit of a consolidation of the brick and mortar retailers. But what from what I'm seeing, at least from a traffic perspective at market, is that there's a growing designer base. So are you guys working with lines that cater to that side of the business? And, how do you handle those appointments?
That's been a very big problem for me in the last 12 years, and I do not work with designers at all. My stores want my support, that I'm not going to take their customer away. And the designers have been more and more market, and frankly, they know from a factor that they have to go to my retail stores. So I'm still staying with my retailers at this particular time. And I'm just saying, if you want to work with my product, you have to go directly to my stores. Now, I do have another line that has expanded with the designers, but the problem is that our product is not available for the designers when they want it, because it's not something that we constantly bring in. We've had problems with getting our factories in Vietnam and China supporting us, because again, I work for two small outfits, and they're both, one we own the factory, the other one we do not.
Sure.
So we've been told over and over again, when something comes in, oh, it'll be here on the October container. October passes, doesn't come in till February and March, which doesn't work for my stores and doesn't work for the designer. So
that's fair.
I've been very reluctant in working with designers, because all they want is, well, show me pictures. No, because I can't guarantee when it's going to be in.
Have good websites.
All right. Well, look, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Oh, Harvey, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree with you totally, Steve. And that I have a line that they don't want to do e-commerce. And yet I have some retailers who do sell them online, some of the products, but I require them to back it up. In other words, if you want to put it online, then I want you to put one on the floor and one to show and one to go, so that you can support your customer base. Likewise, with the interior designers, I always made a point of asking the designers to go to their local retailer and see if they can acquire the product through there. But sometimes they go around my back too. That's happened many a time.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes back to at a very, very like macro level here. I mean, we're at this interesting point where industry is sort of shifting a little bit, right? You've got e-com giants entering into brick and mortar taking the omni-channel approach. You've got a growing designer segment. So I think these conversations are really key for us as a community to have and share best practices with each other, see what's going on out there, and learn from each other. So I'm going to go ahead and thank Heather again for your time and sharing your expertise today. Yes, yeah,
You're
it was
very
really,
welcome.
really insightful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone who made some times, and for those of us who had to brave the storm here to get on the webinar, we're very, very grateful. I hope everyone found this discussion helpful, especially as we prepare for the October market. Quick little plug. Speaking of October market, be sure to get your FIAG ticket if you haven't already. That's happening Friday, October 25th. Heather will be there. She'll be taking questions, I'm sure. Sam will be there. I know most of us will already be there, but if you haven't gotten those tickets, make sure you get them. We're having a fantastic kickoff party Thursday, the 24th, over at the FurnitureDealer.net building. And our next Lead and Learn webinar, we'll actually postpone it to November 1st. So again,
Steve,
thank you, everybody. Oh, yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Sorry, can I just ask one question?
Of course.
I know what I'm having a problem with my stores making up decisions as to going to the October market. How many of you have already been told that they're not be going to the October market? According to the market, we're supposedly much stronger than April, but I know April was a disaster for for a couple of my lines. Total disaster.
Yeah. Well, I can share a little bit of insight again, just coming from working with the market authority. I know their big push this market was specifically small to medium-sized retailers and trying to grow that segment of their market attendance. I think last year it was a little bit more focused on the one-of-a-kind or antique or kind of the design or designer segment of the industry and getting them to turn out in bigger numbers. So I hope that this go around and moving into next year, I think it's typically like a 3 to 4 market cycle where they pick a segment of the industry and try to grow that piece of it. I know this go around, they're focusing on small to medium sized retailers.
Okay. Thank
so
you.
hopefully we'll see more foot traffic there.
Steve, I was just thinking, as a benefit to the IHFRA members, the reps, why don't you be able to get a registration list from the market authority to pass out to the reps so that they can address the people that are registered? Because I think they're doing a more accurate job of getting registrations now than they did in the past. I think that would be a very good benefit for all of you reps.
Yeah, that is something we have certainly done in the past. We have to walk a fine line there. That's all I'll say about it. But likewise, if there's and maybe this goes back to Elaine, your question, if there are customers that have said they're on the fence or that have said that they're not considering coming to market, I can tell you firsthand, the High Point Market Authority has some really great programs and in some cases, some additional resources that they can utilize to get those customers there. They want as many brick and mortar retailers to be at that show as possible. So it's like anything else, any other database. They only know the people that have been historically. So, and who their prospects are. So if there are customers that you guys have out in the field that are not coming, send them to us and we can share that information with the market authority and see if there's anything we can do to get them there.
Okay.
Great. All right. Well, I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much for taking time on a busy Friday. And thanks again, Heather, for sharing that expertise. And I'm looking forward to seeing everybody hopefully here in a few weeks at market.
You got it.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a great rest of your day. Take care.